In this video, I want to talk quickly about English to German translation. This is a pretty straightforward article. It's about a political issue, so the language is pretty standardized, which of course makes it easier to translate because German political language or formal German is pretty standard. You don't have a lot of leeway to make translation decisions, and English is this, the English is also kind of within a framework, so um, it makes it a lot more straightforward to translate. But the difficulty in these kinds of texts is fact checking, really doing the research, because it's like also a news article, so it's written by a journalist, or in this case not a journalist, but you would have to also do some research to actually look up the names of the organizations mentioned, to talk about the events that they allude to, and then make sure that you know what is actually happening to understand the whole context. So let me start. You see right here the title is translated really straightforward. Einsame Wölfe werden in Rudeln geboren, lone wolves are born in packs. Like it's really one to one. Are born Lone wolves are born. I'm using the passive. Einsamer Wolf is also the direct translation of lone wolf, and we use it for the same kind of phenomenon in Germany. Um, the only difference that you might notice here are born in packs, and in German, normally the verb comes in the final position, um, or the main word, or the main verb. This is the auxiliary verb, right? Are born. And in English you put them all together because English is very strict. You always have SVO, subject, lone wolves, verb, are born in packs, and in German the verb kind of splits throughout the sentence, the verb group. Then I highlighted like the points I would like to mention. Since its beginnings, racist violence has been a tool used by white nationalists and white supremacists in the US. So I did not translate racist violence. Why? Because the actors are already mentioned. So seit jeher benutzen Rechtsextremistinnen und Rassistinnen in den USA Gewalt. What I'm saying is violence has been a tool used by white nationalists and racist white supremacists because it's already implied. So I didn't mention that. Then what's really important is I'm using the historical present, which you normally use in news writing in Germany. Seit jeher benutzen, this is the present tense. And here they say has been a tool used, or you can say has been used. But they're using a past tense here. What I also this is kind of a free translation. I'm saying right-wing extremists and racists because those we have in Germany, and we don't have white nationalism, white supremacy in that sense in Germany. So we use different terms, but you could, in this case, you could apply it. You don't have to. We don't really have a word for white supremacist. We would have to use the English word for it, or like a really literal translation, which doesn't sound right. So for a white supremacist, you could also just call them a racist, also in the US context, right? So it's a valid synonym. So I can translate I cannot translate white supremacist into German, but I can translate racist into German. I cannot translate white nationalist into German, but I can use the synonym right-wing extremist and translate that into German. And then I'm adding in the USA, right? So it's very clear that that's referring to these hate groups. Gewalt, Menschen einzuschüchtern, zu nötigen und zu terrorisieren. And here they're mentioning they're using two sentences here, right? Perpetrators of this violence understand it intimidates, coerces, and terrorizes. So they made a second sentence, and I didn't want to mention all the perpetrators and the violence again, so I just added the purpose, the three verbs right here, right? So the rhetorical rule of three: to intimidate, to coerce, and zu terrorisieren. They use it too as a active, as an active expression. They use it, the violence too, and in German you have these damit, you have these words, dabei, damit. They create cohesion. They're also kind of pronouns in a way, because it refers to the violence. Sie senden damit eine klare Botschaft. They are thereby sending a clear message, is what it literally means. You wouldn't write it like that in English. Who has the right to be here and whose values will prevail? Wer das Recht hat, hier zu sein und wessen Werte sich durchsetzen? Here again, they're using the future and whose values will prevail, and I'm using the narrative present. Wessen Werte sich durchsetzen, nicht durchsetzen werden. I see this a lot in translations from native English students, that they use the future tense all the time, or the past tense. In German, you can really write in the present most of the time. So, in September 1963, 4 members of the Ku Klux Klan, KKK, here I'm adding the abbreviation because I want to use it again later. This is like general just writing practice. And I did not include the information that the KKK was founded after the Civil War, because even in Germany everybody knows kind of where they came from, the Ku Klux Klan. So I just left out this information that the KKK was founded after the Civil War. Planted at least 15 sticks of dynamite. And then I'm keeping everything the same. The 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm keeping all the English names because German readers, they understand enough English to make sense of a name. In German, the 15 sticks of dynamite, they come at the end of the sentence. So first comes the verb. Sie legten, and then I have to put the 15 sticks of dynamite in the end. Sie legten. You cannot say 4 Mitglieder des Ku Klux Klan legten 15 Stäbe Dynamit im September 1963. 4 Mitglieder des Ku Klux Klan legten 15 Stäbe Dynamit in der 16th Street Baptist Church. This wouldn't work. Cannot exactly tell you why, but it has to come in German, it has to come at the end in this kind of construction. When detonated, so here they're using a past participle, when detonated, and I'm using a noun. Nouns in German are pretty much the safest choice, right? When detonated, were killed, and I turned it into an active. I said the explosion killed, because first of all I want a noun, and I want an active sentence. It makes it easier. Then and then I made a full stop here, right after the name of the girls that were killed, and then I have a second sentence. 22 others were injured. And here they all put it in the same sentence. I use this for emphasis, and also because I didn't use the passive, so I said the explosion killed, and then I have to make a new sentence because then there's a new verb for the people that were injured. This was the fourth bombing in as many weeks. We don't have a way to say that as many weeks, so I have to say it's the fourth bombing in 4 weeks. And in Germany you would emphasize it. You would say, es war bereits der vierte Anschlag. This was already the fourth bombing in as many weeks. You wouldn't say that. And you often see that these emphasis words are translated from German to English for no where you wouldn't put them as an English writer. 52 years later, I prefer writing numbers. It's just easier to read, easier to write. Dylan Roof walked into another church. So I used the word betreten, which is kind of elevated register. You could also say betrat. And the reason I use that is actually gegen Dylan Roof. Yeah, because you couldn't say anything else. You couldn't say he went into the church, or because that all sounds like he joined the church. So I have to use this verb betreten to make clear that he physically walked into the church. Here again, I'm not translating the name. He sat in Bible study class for nearly 1 hour. And Germany is time, manner, place. ZAP, you also say. So the time comes first. Eine Stunde lang. Not in English, right? In English, the time comes. He sat in a Bible study class for nearly 1 hour. So the time comes last. In German, the time comes first. Time. He sat. There's no manner. He sat there 1 hour. And place, in a Bible study class. So the place, time, you could say like ruhig, that would be the manner or something. And then comes the place. And then he then shot and killed 9 people. In German, if you shoot somebody, it already means they're dead. So there's no word for shooting somebody. Yeah, there is a word for shooting and not killing. There are different words for it. So you don't have to specify it. There's erschießen and anschießen. Then there's the name of the victims again. Here, the roof, unlike the men who bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church, this is a parenthetical element, you call that, when you have 2 commas, and you kind of put the clause inside the main clause, and I try to avoid that. I want to have like the comma in the middle, but I don't want to have a clause inside another clause with commas at the beginning and the end. Anders als die Attentäter, here they say the men who bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church. Why is that? Because agent words in English are very hard to form, agent nouns. In German it's really easy. You can add an ER to basically anything. Attentäter, Übeltäter, Ruhestörer, whatever, and immediately becomes a noun. And in English there are these kind of, it is possible, but it's more difficult. Just how the language works. So they would say the men who worked, the men who bombed. You could say the attackers, but that's not an agent noun strictly formed from a verb. This is like a different word again, kind of. He was not a member of the KKK or any other hate group. I didn't translate hate group because only just recently they've been starting to translate like hate speech, hate group, these kind of words into German. Just started kind of this year, I think, with all the Facebook stuff. And I translated this article 2 years ago, and then we didn't really, a German word for this was not yet in sight, and I don't think we need one. He was a 20-year-old Southerner. Here again you have this it's not an agent noun, but it's like a place noun, right? Southerner, Südstaatler, we have a direct word for that. Dem nicht jahrelang eingeredet war. So here, without the benefit of, this is kind of a ironic twist, which is lost in my translation, who was not told for years that his whiteness made him superior, is what I said, so I didn't include the benefit of years of being told. Then they talk about the next one. Unlike Robert Chambliss, the first man convicted for the 16th Street Baptist Church, I removed the brackets and made it part of the sentence. Because as I said, I don't like to have parenthetical elements. I want to have clear sentences, whichever language I write in. Chambliss, der im Jahr 63, and you cannot say in 1963. Normally you would have to say im Jahr 1963, 59 Jahre alt war und 1977 als erster Täter für den Anschlag auf die 16th Street Baptist Church verurteilt wurde. And here, one thing I want you to notice is I'm using the simple past. In der im Jahr 59 Jahre alt war, nicht gewesen war. I don't need to use the past perfect, although this is in year 1963, which was before the year 1977. No, I can use the simple past to cover both, right? So don't get confused with your past tenses. Stick to the narrative present, and then if you have to use the simple past, simple future, and this basically should cover all the things you want to talk about. And a lot of the other more complex tenses are used predominantly in spoken language. In writing, at least I have the tendency to use fewer tenses. Ruf hingegen handelte als einsamer Wolf. So here I'm using a contrastive preposition, like Ruf, however, acted as a lone wolf, because here they have two short sentences. They're using this paratactical expression. He acted alone. He was a lone wolf, to create this emphasis. And I'm going to use the contrastive preposition, however, hingegen. Ruf hingegen handelte als einsamer Wolf. And then I'm using a loose translation, paraphrase, a term with many interpretations. I could say ein Begriff mit vielen Auslegungen, but we have a shorter expression for this. We call it also in English a stretchy term, right? Das ist ein sehr dehnbarer Begriff. And so instead of saying it's a term with many interpretations, I'm saying it's a very flexible expression. You can use it for a lot of things. So when you see these, when you see kind of a complicated description in your source text and you think, hey, in my target language there's a simpler word for it, use it. It's good writing practice. Also when you're revising your own writing, of course. The simplest definition, refers. So this is something I talk about a lot. It's the inanimate agent. The definition refers. The definition is inanimate. It's not a living thing, and it's referring. It's doing something directly. In Germany, that's not so easy. In German, it's not so easy to say that. Die einfachste Definition, you could say, die einfachste Definition beschreibt jemanden, beschreibt eine Person, but it's just not natural to say that. So you have to use this kind of construction just to indicate that that the definition is inanimate. Nach der einfachsten Definition, so I have to say, according to the simplest definition, this is a person who plans and executes a violent act by themselves. And yes, so this is like it's these kind of things. You also have to say, for example, in this text it says, you can't say this text says in German. Who executes a violent act by themselves and not as part of a larger organization or movement. Another definition, eine breitere Definition umfasst. Here it works. Here you could say that. Here I'm using die Definition umfasst, which means like literally the definition grasps or comprises members that are have been indoctrinated in groups but are acting alone. And why am I using umfasst, which is also like high, or more high register verb, which I try to avoid. The reason is it's not splittable. Eine breitere Definition schließt Mitglieder ein. Eine breitere Definition bezieht sich auf Mitglieder. These are all more complex verbs consisting of several components. So I'm using the one that I don't have to split in the shortest one. You could also say beinhaltet. Eine breitere Definition beinhaltet, but that's already longer. It means the same thing. So I'm using the shortest term and one that you can't split. It's something to consider when you're translating it to German. Other, so here again you have the definitions. Other, here they say others describe people who act violently. And I didn't want to say andere because this sounds like other people. So I'm making it explicit again by saying other definitions describe these people who act violently. Here again, the problem with the agent nouns. Gewalttäter, it's very easy to form a noun referring to a person from the word violence. So Gewalttäter, and then that's the person who acts violently. So there's no simple word for that in English. Perpetrator of violence, the violent offender. There are these kind of legal terms. Oh, you can't just they still consist of several words. The modern concept is linked to a leaderless resistance strategy promoted by white nationalists. Here again, I'm calling it Rechtsextreme, not weiße Nationalisten, which you could use to kind of show that you're referring specifically to the USA, but it's not it's kind of this would be like a foreignizing effect. The propagated strategy of leaderless resistance, which also exists in Germany among the extreme right. And then they talk a little bit about history. Here they're talking about the visible national leaders, landesweit Bekannte. So I said nationally known instead of visible national, because national sichtbare nationale Anführer, you wouldn't say that. A national is just not a positive term in German, so you wouldn't use it's marked if you use it. It would mean like you're glorifying nationalism in this context. Then they were charged with conspiracy to overthrow the US government, which is there's actually a law called conspiracy to overthrow the US government, 18 US Code section 2385. So I put quotes around it to kind of show that it's that this is an actual law which doesn't exist in Germany, and this is the name of the law. Louis Beam, one of them, like Louis Beam, einer der Angeklagten. Here again, they're using one of them. They're not saying one of the defendants, and that's kind of hard. Yeah, einer von ihnen. So I want to specify it again. I don't want to have these loose pronouns. I don't want to say one of them. I want to make it specific. This is the strategy I use throughout the text, as you might have noticed. Published republished, veröffentlichte mehrmals, so I had to look this up actually, because I said he didn't republish, he published it several times. So I looked it up. He kind of he published it a couple of times apparently. And here they say leaderless resistance, which would make getting caught harder. And then this is a verbal expression. It would make it harder to get caught. And in Germany, we tend to nominalize. So I said as a conspirative strategy, als konspirative Strategie, makes it shorter in writing, because using the nominal expression would be very unnatural to say, die es erschweren würde, erwischt zu werden, or something like that. Die es schwieriger machen würde, erwischt zu werden. This is impossible to say. Like, might be grammatically correct, but so nominalization is the number one strategy in this situation. The other proponents include white nationalists. Here I call them neo-Nazis. White nationalists, neo-Nazis. Tom Metzger wrote in his essay Law for the Lone Wolf that all involvement with membership groups should be avoided. And here I also looked it up because they talked about white nationalists, Alex Curtis and Tom Metzger. And I didn't really know what was up with this Alex Curtis guy, but I found out this Tom Metzger was the guy who wrote the Laws for the Lone Wolf. So I left out Alex Curtis and I've kept Tom Metzger, because there I know that's his essay. And they call it membership groups. I call it organized groups, because Mitgliedsvereine, there is like a word like that, but it's not that commonly used, or it's used in a different context. So the label, die Bezeichnung, Lone Wolf, here again I'm specifying, right? Because they're using the label to refer to something that was mentioned before, but I'm going to specify again what kind of label we mean here. You see a lot of the translation is just ensuring the coherence of the target text, using these strategies to make sure that that the text flows for the reader. This is really technical stuff. It's not how do you say? There's no magic in it. It's not creative writing in that sense. Ist vielleicht zutreffend, aber unvollständig, is incomplete. It's pretty straightforward. He identified with organized racist groups, confessing und gestand, dass seine Taten einen Rassenkrieg auslösen sollten. Here I put the race war in parentheses, because everything with race is very touchy in German, so you can put the quotes around it to make sure it's not misunderstood, or that these were his actual words. Then his homepage, Last Rhodesian.com. Here I inserted a footnote to explain to the Germans what Rhodesia actually means. I wrote like Rhodesia is the name of Zimbabwe under the British rule, and Cecil Rhodes was admired by white nationalists. And I have to add this context because I don't think everybody in America even knows it, but in Germany you really have to explain that for the audience. On his homepage he posed surrounded with Confederate flags and swastikas, and he published a manifesto with, so I shortened where he shared. I didn't say the manifesto where he shared his ideas. I used the preposition a manifesto with his ideas. This is just, cutting down the text, with his views about people of color, and people of color, don't even try to translate it into German. It's not going to work. It's going to turn into something hideous. So you leave that in English. and in court he wore the shoes with neo-Nazi, what do you say? During his trial he wore shoes decorated with neo-Nazi codes and Klan runes. Schrieb, dass den Rassismus entdeckt habe. So here I actually verbalized. Interesting. I didn't say he wrote about his discovery. Schrieb über seine Entdeckung des Rassismus, sondern I said he wrote that he had discovered racism, because here I can use the conjunctive, which is pretty good to introduce reported speech in German, which doesn't work that way in English. After Googling black on white crime, and here I have to introduce another footnote where I explain, like in Germany we have a similar propaganda term which is used, like immigrant crime is used here also by Nazi groups, and in a similar context as this black on white crime thing. And I also added a footnote for the Council of Conservative Citizens, because I didn't know what they were doing, so I would have to research it anyways to see what I'm translating. And he spent time reading the Daily Stormer, a neo-Nazi website. So that's it for now. You see the translation strategies from English into German. A lot of it is not that language specific. A lot of it is just to ensure that the text flows naturally. And yeah, the strategies I use most often is the narrative present, then nominalization, forming compounds, and I actually repeat the nouns a lot of times instead of using pronouns. And then I add a lot of explicitation when, I add context, because I have the German audience in mind, and I know what you can expect them to know about the American neo-Nazi context and what you might have to explain. So I'm doing a lot of research too. So that's actually a big part of the job, right? Cultural transfer. That's why they call it. Okay, so thanks for watching, and if you have any comments or questions or any ideas, just leave them in the comments below. Thanks.